haven't got all day.
Welcome to another long, slow journey through the forgotten and frankly boring corners of World War II. Tonight's episode is called What Happened to the Lost Nazi Treasure? The Mystery of Gold and Stolen Art. We'll quietly drift through the details that history books often skip, because they were, quite honestly, not very exciting then, and they're not very exciting now. But that's the point. You don't need explosions, heroes, or dramatic battles. You just need slow voices, endless details, and a chance to let your mind wander until sleep takes over. So, get comfortable, turn down the lights, and let's begin our quiet march back into the most boring parts of history. As the Second World War drew to its violent close, rumors began to spread across Europe. Whispers of trains loaded with gold, of masterpieces hidden deep within caves, of jewels and currency spirited away under the cover of night. These were not mere fairy tales, but fragments of truth, evidence of a systematic plunder by the Nazi regime. Yet, even today, much of that treasure has never been recovered. What happened to the lost gold, the stolen art, and the fortunes of entire nations? To answer this, we must begin at the heart of a broken world, where war had turned wealth into shadows and treasures into mysteries. World War II was not only a military conflict, it was an economic war, a war of resources, money, and power. From the very beginning, the Nazi regime understood that victory would require more than just armies. It would require wealth. And so, as they swept across Europe, they plundered everything of value. Banks were emptied. Gold reserves were seized. Private collections of paintings, sculptures, and artifacts were catalogued and stolen. From Poland to France, from Belgium to the Netherlands, the Nazis looted with cold precision. Each conquest was not only territorial, it was financial. The victims were not only nations but also individuals. Jewish families, in particular, were stripped of their assets. Homes were raided, businesses seized, and priceless heirlooms stolen. To the Nazis, wealth was fuel for war, but it was also a symbol of dominance. Every bar of gold, every painting, every jewel was proof of their control over conquered lands. By the middle of the war, the scale of Nazi looting was staggering. Historians estimate that billions of dollars worth of gold and art were taken during the conflict. The Reichsbank, Germany's central bank, became a repository of stolen wealth. Gold reserves from occupied countries were melted down and stamped with new marks, their origins erased. Entire trainloads of valuables were sent to Berlin. Some went directly into financing the war machine, purchasing weapons, supplies, and raw materials. Others were hidden, stored away for a future that never came. The treasures included not just bars of gold, but rare coins, jewels, and cultural artifacts of immeasurable value. In parallel, the Nazis pursued art with the same ruthless efficiency. Paintings by Rembrandt, Vermeer, and Da Vinci were taken from museums and private homes. Entire libraries were stripped bare. Hitler himself dreamed of building a massive cultural museum in Linz, Austria, filled with looted art that would glorify the Reich. To him, the theft of art was not only about wealth, it was about rewriting history and placing German culture at the center of the world. One of the earliest and most famous cases of Nazi plunder was the theft of gold from the National Bank of Poland. When Germany invaded in 1939, Poland's gold reserves, valued at hundreds of millions in today's money, were hastily evacuated. Some of it reached safety, but much was seized by the Nazis. The fate of this treasure remains one of the enduring mysteries of the war. Where did it go? Some historians believe it was melted and hidden in Germany's mountains. Others argue it was shipped across borders, stashed away in neutral countries, or lost in secret transports that never reached their destination. The story of Poland's gold set the stage for countless other tales of missing treasure, each one shrouded in secrecy, betrayal, and silence. For the Nazis, treasure was more than wealth. It was a weapon. Gold could be traded for vital war supplies, even in the late stages of the conflict when Germany was collapsing. Art and cultural treasures, meanwhile, were symbols of psychological dominance. To strip a nation of its cultural heritage was to humiliate it, to erase its identity. As Allied forces pushed closer to Berlin, the Nazis began to hide their stolen wealth. Caves, salt mines, and alpine lakes became hiding places. Trains packed with valuables disappeared into tunnels. And in the chaos of retreat, much of this treasure simply vanished. Soldiers fled, records were burned, and the locations of countless caches were lost to history. It was in this moment of collapse, the twilight of the Reich, that the legend of the lost Nazi treasure was born. As Europe lay in ruins in 1945, stories of hidden Nazi riches spread quickly. Some of these tales were true. Allied soldiers uncovered vast stores of gold and art in German salt mines. Others were half-truths, whispers that grew into legends over time. In the ruins of Germany and the liberated nations, people searched for answers. Where had the wealth gone? Who had hidden it? Could it still be recovered? For families whose possessions had been stolen, the mystery was deeply personal. For nations stripped of their gold and art, it was a matter of identity and justice. But as the dust settled, much remained unresolved. The Nazis had hidden their treasure well, and in the chaos of defeat, the trail of gold and art grew cold. What began as war plunder had now become one of history's greatest mysteries. The story of the lost Nazi treasure begins not with maps or legends, but with the brutal reality of war, of banks emptied, art stolen, and lives shattered. The treasure was real, its disappearance undeniable. But what happened next? How it was moved, hidden, and in some cases discovered, would become a story that blurred the line between history and myth. And so, as the world rebuilt itself from the ashes of war, the mystery of the missing treasure only deepened, leaving us with questions that remain unanswered to this day. For the Nazis, conquest was never just about territory. It was about wealth. Gold, jewels, and priceless works of art were not mere spoils of war, but symbols of power. They believed that in claiming the treasures of others, they could reshape the world in their own image. To understand the mystery of the lost Nazi treasure, we must first understand the obsession that drove it, an obsession with wealth, culture, and the illusion of immortality. Gold was the universal currency of power. During World War II, banknotes could collapse, economies could fail, but gold retained its value everywhere. The Nazis knew this. From the earliest days of their expansion, they targeted the gold reserves of every nation they invaded. When German forces marched into Austria in 1938, the country's reserves were quickly absorbed into the Reichsbank. In Czechoslovakia, gold deposits held in London were transferred to Nazi accounts after political pressure. And in Poland, as we saw earlier, the National Bank's gold became one of the first great prizes of the war. Gold financed weapons. It bought oil and raw materials from neutral nations. It gave Germany leverage, even as the world condemned its aggression. To Hitler's regime, every bar of gold was not only wealth, it was fuel for war. Beyond gold, there was something even more symbolic: art. To Hitler and his inner circle, art was not just culture. It was a statement of identity. Hitler, who once aspired to be a painter, believed that German destiny was tied to cultural supremacy. In his vision, the Reich would one day house the greatest art collection in the world, displayed in the Führer Museum he planned to build in Linz, Austria. To achieve this, the Nazis launched one of the largest campaigns of cultural theft in history. Teams of art experts, often backed by the Einsatzstab Reichsleiter Rosenberg, the ERR, cataloged and seized masterpieces across occupied Europe. Paintings by Vermeer, Rembrandt, and Raphael disappeared into Nazi vaults. Sculptures, manuscripts, and ancient relics were crated up and shipped to secret storage. Art stolen from Jewish families carried a double weight, not only wealth, but also the erasure of cultural identity. To strip a family of its heirlooms was to erase its presence. To take a nation's art was to humiliate it. In this way, Nazi plunder was not only economic, it was ideological. At the center of this obsession stood the Reichsbank, the financial heart of Nazi Germany. Within its vaults, stolen gold and foreign reserves were melted, recast, and stamped with new marks. The process erased their origin, making it nearly impossible to trace where the gold had come from. The Reichsbank also became infamous for accepting gold extracted from far darker sources. Evidence uncovered after the war revealed that some deposits included valuables taken from concentration camp victims, rings, watches, even dental gold. This revelation shocked the world and underscored the regime's ruthless obsession with converting human lives into financial power. In many ways, the Reichsbank symbolized the Nazi approach. Everything could be seized, processed, and transformed into fuel for the war machine. For Hitler and his inner circle, wealth was also a tool of propaganda. Photographs of Nazi officials surrounded by treasures, reports of priceless collections now under their control. All of it reinforced the image of a regime destined to dominate. The dream of the Führer Museum was part of this propaganda. Hitler imagined halls filled with the world's masterpieces, curated to present Germany not only as militarily powerful, but as the inheritor of civilization itself. Art was not just to be displayed, it was to be wielded as proof of cultural supremacy. In this way, the Nazi obsession with art and gold was about more than greed. It was about creating a mythology of power. To hold the treasures of Europe was to claim its soul. As the war turned against Germany, this obsession grew desperate. By 1944, defeat loomed. Yet the Nazi leadership continued to move treasures from one hiding place to another. Gold shipments disappeared into the Alps. Art was buried deep within salt mines and caves. Why hide what could still be used? For many Nazi leaders, the treasures represented a vision of the future, even in defeat. Some hoped that hidden wealth could fund a post-war resurgence. Others clung to it as a personal escape plan, a way to barter for survival, if captured. This frantic scattering of treasure is what transformed Nazi plunder into mystery. For in their obsession to control it, they ensured much of it would vanish, scattered across mountains, rivers, and tunnels where it might never be found. The Nazi obsession with wealth and power was not just about greed. It was about identity, propaganda, and survival. Gold kept the war alive. Art symbolized cultural dominance. And in their final, desperate moments, the treasures became ghosts, hidden away in hopes of a future that never came. To this day, those ghosts continue to haunt us, whispering from the shadows of history, daring us to ask, what remains hidden, and what has already been lost forever? In the final desperate years of the war, as Allied forces closed in on Germany from all sides, the Nazis faced a terrifying reality. Their empire was crumbling, their armies were retreating, and the treasures they had plundered, gold, art, jewels, and priceless artifacts, were in danger of being seized. In response, They began a frantic effort to hide their wealth, scattering it across mountains, salt mines, and tunnels. What they left behind was not only a trail of secrecy, but the birth of legends that endure to this day. As the Allied advance accelerated in 1944 and 1945, the Nazi High Command ordered that treasures be evacuated from vulnerable cities. Berlin, Vienna, and Munich were no longer safe. Trains, trucks, and convoys carried crates of valuables deep into the countryside. The retreat was chaotic. Soldiers moved shipments under cover of night. Records were incomplete or deliberately destroyed. Entire trainloads vanished, their locations never revealed. The more the Reich collapsed, the more frantic the movement of treasure became. For many Nazi officials, these shipments were not only about protecting the Reich's wealth, they were also about self-preservation. Some hoped to use hidden gold as bargaining chips with the Allies. Others planned to reclaim their fortunes after the war. But in the confusion of collapse, treasures disappeared into shadows, their fate unknown. Among the most famous hiding places were the salt mines of Germany and Austria. These vast underground caverns were cool, dry, and secure, perfect for storing valuables. In the Merkur salt mine in Thuringia, Allied soldiers later discovered an astonishing cache: over 100 tons of gold bars, foreign currency, and stolen art. Paintings by Vermeer, sculptures, and stacks of stolen currency lay deep underground, guarded until the last moment. Other mines, such as those near Altaussee in Austria, held masterpieces destined for Hitler's planned museum in Linz. Works by Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and countless others were hidden in these subterranean vaults. The mines became secret libraries of stolen culture, sealed away as the Reich collapsed. One of the most enduring legends of this period is the so-called Nazi gold train. According to local accounts in Poland, a train loaded with gold, jewels, and stolen treasures departed from Wrocław in early 1945, heading toward the Sudets Mountains. Some say it was hidden in tunnels near Wałbrzych, sealed behind walls of stone and explosives. Others believe it never existed at all, that it was a myth born of confusion and hope. Yet even in recent years, treasure hunters have searched for the gold train, convinced that beneath the earth lies a fortune waiting to be uncovered. Whether fact or legend, the story of the gold train reflects the chaos of the time. Entire convoys disappeared. Records were lost, and in the fog of defeat, the line between history and myth began to blur. The treasures were not only hidden in mines. Castles in Bavaria and Austria became makeshift vaults. Remote mountain fortresses housed crates of currency and art. And in places like Lake Topolitsi, rumors spread that Nazi gold had been dumped into the depths to avoid capture. Fishermen spoke of crates glimpsed beneath the waters. Divers decades later claimed to have found counterfeit currency, part of the Nazi plan to destabilize Allied economies. Yet whether true treasure lies at the bottom of these lakes remains an open question. These hiding places added to the growing sense of mystery. Treasures scattered in every direction, concealed in landscapes that seemed to guard their secrets jealously. As the war ended, many of the men who knew the locations of hidden treasures were killed in battle or executed. Others kept their secrets, hoping one day to return. Some even spread false stories to confuse their pursuers. This combination of real treasures discovered, like the Merkur salt mine, and rumors of treasures still hidden gave rise to the enduring legends of lost Nazi wealth. Were there still trains buried beneath mountains? Gold resting in the dark waters of alpine lakes? Priceless paintings locked away in forgotten bunkers? For survivors, these questions became tantalizing mysteries. For historians, they became puzzles to solve. And for treasure hunters, they became lifelong obsessions. The evacuation of treasure was both an act of desperation and a seed of mystery. What began as a frantic attempt to protect stolen wealth ended as one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles. Salt mines gave up their secrets, but countless caches vanished without a trace. The treasures that were hidden in the dying days of the Reich remain a haunting symbol of greed, chaos, and the shadows of history. And as we turn the page, we follow the trail of those who tried to find them. As the Third Reich collapsed in 1945, Allied soldiers stumbled upon something extraordinary. Behind sealed mine doors, within dark tunnels, and in forgotten castles, they found not just weapons and documents, but treasures. Gold bars stacked in neat rows, paintings by the masters of Europe, sculptures that had once graced museums and cathedrals. These discoveries marked the beginning of one of history's greatest hunts, the Allied search for the stolen wealth of Nazi Germany. And at the heart of this mission stood a small, dedicated group known as the Monuments Men. As Allied troops pushed deeper into Germany and Austria, they uncovered more than battlefields. In a salt mine at Merkur, American forces discovered over 100 tons of gold, vast amounts of currency, and priceless works of art, carefully hidden underground. Elsewhere, in the Altaussee salt mine in Austria, soldiers uncovered thousands of paintings, including works by Michelangelo, Da Vinci, and Vermeer, pieces meant for Hitler's Dream Museum in Linz. The discovery was staggering. Crates upon crates filled with the cultural wealth of Europe, stacked away in caverns that looked more like vaults than mines. These finds confirmed what had long been whispered. The Nazis had hidden their stolen treasures across the continent, and the Allies were now racing to recover them before they were lost forever. Amidst the chaos of liberation, the Allies formed a special task force, the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives Program, better known as the Monuments Men. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were historians, curators, artists, and scholars, men and women tasked with preserving Europe's cultural heritage in the midst of war. Their mission was twofold: to protect monuments and works of art from destruction, and to locate and recover stolen treasures. Armed with maps, records, and the occasional tip from locals, they ventured into mines, castles, and hidden storerooms. They cataloged every discovery meticulously, knowing that each item represented not just wealth, but the identity of a nation. For them, the stakes were more than financial. To recover a stolen painting or a looted manuscript was to restore part of Europe's soul. The Monuments Men achieved remarkable successes. They recovered masterpieces thought lost forever, returning them to the Louvre, the Uffizi, and countless other institutions. Families who had been stripped of their heirlooms saw some of them restored. The rescue of Michelangelo's Madonna of Bruges, stolen from a Belgian church, became one of the most celebrated recoveries. Another triumph was the return of Vermeer's The Astronomer, which had been hidden among thousands of looted works. Each recovery was a victory not only for the Allies, but for civilization itself. In the quiet caverns of the mines, amidst dust and shadows, the Monuments Men carried out one of the most extraordinary missions of the war, not with guns, but with care, patience, and reverence for history. But even with their successes, the Monuments Men faced an impossible task. The scale of Nazi looting was vast, and records were incomplete or deliberately destroyed. For every painting recovered, another remained missing. For every vault uncovered, another treasure was rumored to be hidden elsewhere. The Amber Room, a world-famous chamber of amber and gold from Russia, vanished without a trace. Entire collections from Jewish families disappeared into the fog of the war. The Monuments Men had only so much time, and as the Cold War loomed, many investigations were left unfinished. Their work was heroic but incomplete, The treasure hunt, in many ways, had only just begun. The legacy of the monument's men lives on. They proved that even amidst destruction, humanity could still choose preservation. They showed that art and culture are not luxuries but essential parts of civilization worth protecting, even in war. Yet their story also reminds us of what was lost. For every masterpiece saved, another may still be hidden in a mine, a vault, or a private collection, waiting to be rediscovered. Their mission ended, but the mystery of the lost Nazi treasure continued, carried forward by historians, governments, and treasure hunters alike. The work of the monument's men revealed treasures that the Nazis had tried to bury in darkness. But even as they succeeded in saving countless works, much remained missing. The gold, the jewels, the lost masterpieces. They slipped further into legend. The hunt had begun, but it was far from over. And as the world moved into the uncertain years after the war, the mystery only deepened. For every vault uncovered, another lay hidden. For every painting returned, another vanished without a trace. Even after the Allies uncovered mines filled with gold and art, countless treasures remained missing. Some were whispered about in rumors, others became legends. What happened to these lost fortunes, and could they still lie hidden beneath the earth today? One of the most enduring mysteries is the fate of the Polish National Bank's gold reserves. When Germany invaded Poland in 1939, much of the country's gold was spirited away, some of it reaching safety abroad, but significant amounts fell into Nazi hands. Historians have searched for it ever since. Some believe it was melted and stored in vaults deep in Germany. Others think it was hidden in mountain bunkers or smuggled into neutral countries. No definitive trace has ever been found. For Poland, the missing gold represents more than wealth. It symbolizes the trauma of invasion, the violation of a nation's sovereignty, and the wounds of a war that still echo today. Perhaps the most famous missing treasure of the war is the Amber Room of Russia. Once called the eighth wonder of the world, this dazzling chamber was built of amber panels, gold leaf, and mirrors, housed in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg. When the Germans invaded in 1941, the room was dismantled and transported to Königsberg, in present-day Kaliningrad. There, it was displayed for a time. But as the war turned against Germany, the Amber Room vanished. Some say it was destroyed in bombings. Others claim it was hidden in mines or on ships that sank before reaching safety. To this day, its fate remains unknown. Replicas have been built, but the original Amber Room remains one of history's most tantalizing lost treasures. Beyond the great national treasures, there were the personal collections stolen from Jewish families and private collectors across Europe. Thousands of paintings, sculptures, and artifacts were seized, cataloged, and often sold or traded. Some resurfaced in museums or private collections after the war. Others were returned to families through painstaking legal battles. But many simply vanished. Their provenance erased, their identities lost. These artworks may hang today in private homes, their true stories unknown. For the families, the missing art was more than wealth. It was memory, heirlooms tied to generations. Their absence is a reminder that the Nazi treasure hunt was not just about nations, but about individuals whose lives and legacies were stolen. As the war ended, rumors spread of hidden caches that had never been recovered. Stories told of gold dumped in lakes like Toplitze in Austria, sealed in crates to sink beneath the cold waters. Others spoke of treasure hidden in abandoned tunnels of the Bavarian Alps. In the decades since, divers and treasure hunters have searched these sites. Some found counterfeit currency, part of Nazi plans to destabilize Allied economies. But the true treasures, the gold, the jewels, the priceless art, remain elusive? Were they destroyed in the chaos of retreat? Were they secretly taken abroad? Or do they still lie hidden, waiting to be discovered? The uncertainty keeps the mystery alive. The missing gold and stolen art are not just material wealth. They are symbols of loss of nations, families, and identities. The Amber Room represents cultural grandeur stolen and erased. Poland's missing gold represents the theft of sovereignty. The vanished heirlooms of Jewish families represent personal histories cut short by war and genocide. To search for these treasures is to search not only for gold or art, but for justice. For some, the recovery of a single painting can restore a family's dignity. For others, the missing treasure has become a haunting reminder that some wounds of the war may never fully heal. Even now, the missing treasures of the Nazis remain shrouded in silence. Some may lie at the bottom of lakes, others behind sealed stone walls, others lost forever to fire and destruction. Their stories are part of the unfinished history of the war, a history written not in battles, but in whispers, legends, and unanswered questions. And as long as they remain missing, the mystery of the lost Nazi treasure continues to echo through time. When the war ended, the physical battles ceased, but the stories did not. Across Europe, whispers grew louder, of trains hidden in tunnels, of gold resting at the bottom of lakes, of secret vaults sealed behind stone. These legends, whether true or not, gave the mystery of Nazi treasure a life of its own. And even decades later, they continue to spark curiosity, dreams, and conspiracy theories. Perhaps the most famous legend is that of the Nazi gold train. According to stories passed down in Poland, a train loaded with gold, jewels, and stolen art left the city of Wrocław in 1945, heading toward the Sudetes Mountains. Then, it disappeared. Some claim the train was hidden in a network of underground tunnels built by the Nazis, part of the vast Reich complex. Others believe it was buried in secret, its entrances sealed with explosives. In recent years, explorers with ground-penetrating radar believed they had found evidence of the train's location. The discovery created worldwide headlines. Yet when excavations began, nothing was uncovered. Was the train ever real? Or was it simply a story born of chaos and hope? The mystery remains unsolved. Another enduring legend surrounds Lake Toplitzsee in Austria. Surrounded by steep cliffs and dense forests, its dark waters have long inspired fear and fascination. During the war, the Nazis used the lake as a testing site for explosives. Locals claim they also dumped crates into its depths. After the war, divers recovered counterfeit British banknotes, part of Operation Bernhard, the Nazi plan to destabilize Britain's economy. This only fueled speculation that real treasure lay deeper still. Stories spread of gold bars, secret documents, and even weapons hidden beneath the lake's cold, black waters. To this day, the depths of Toplitzsee are treacherous, filled with logs and debris that make exploration difficult. The lake holds its secrets well, leaving us to wonder what, if anything, truly lies beneath. Some legends suggest that Nazi officials who escaped the collapsing Reich carried treasures with them. Tales of U-boats filled with gold heading to South America have persisted for decades. Argentina, Brazil, and Chile, countries where many Nazi fugitives fled, are often tied to these stories. Were caches of gold and art smuggled across the ocean, hidden in remote estates or jungles? Historians remain divided. While some evidence points to financial networks that supported fleeing Nazis, no definitive treasure has been uncovered. These stories, however, continue to fascinate. They suggest that the missing wealth of Europe might not be buried in mountains or lakes, but scattered across continents, carried by men who refuse to face justice. The onset of the Cold War only deepened the mystery. In the rush to divide Germany, Allied and Soviet forces both seized treasures. Some believe that caches discovered by the Soviets were quietly taken to Moscow, never to be seen again. Others argue that Allied intelligence agencies suppressed information about treasures, using them for political leverage. These suspicions fed conspiracy theories. Was the Amber Room hidden in Russia all along? Did Allied governments cover up discoveries of Nazi gold? Did intelligence agencies use stolen wealth to fund secret operations? Whether true or not, the secrecy of the Cold War created fertile ground for legends to grow. What could not be explained was often left to imagination. In the end, the myths themselves became part of the treasure. The stories of trains, lakes, and secret caches captured the imagination of treasure hunters and historians alike. Expeditions were launched, books were written, documentaries produced, all chasing shadows of a past that refused to fade. Perhaps some of these legends hold truth. Perhaps treasures still lie waiting, sealed in darkness. Or perhaps the greatest treasure left behind was the story itself, a story that continues to inspire hope, curiosity, and wonder. The legends of the lost Nazi treasure remind us that history is not only about facts, but about the mysteries we choose to carry forward. The gold train, the hidden lakes, the escape stories, they blur the line between truth and imagination. And while some may dismiss them as myths, they continue to whisper from the shadows, urging us to keep searching, to keep wondering, and to never forget the treasures that vanished into silence. The war has long since ended. The Reich that once seemed unstoppable lies in ruins. And yet, the mystery of its treasure still lingers, like a shadow across history. What do these lost fortunes truly mean to us today? Why do we continue to search for them, to tell their stories, and to wonder about their fate? The missing Nazi treasures are more than lost gold or stolen paintings. They are reminders of the destruction and plunder that defined the war. Each missing masterpiece represents not only a cultural loss, but the erasure of families, communities, and entire nations. For Poland, the missing gold remains a symbol of invasion and occupation. For Russia, the Amber Room is a wound that has never healed. For Jewish families, the absence of heirlooms taken during the Holocaust is a reminder of lives shattered. The treasures are not just material. They are fragments of memory, history, and identity. Thanks to the work of the monument's men and countless others, many treasures were recovered. Paintings once thought lost now hang again in museums. Sculptures once hidden in mines are on display for the world to see. And yet, much remains unaccounted for. The Amber Room, the missing gold reserves, thousands of private collections. They remain in the shadows, leaving an unfinished chapter in the story of the war. Perhaps they were destroyed. Perhaps they remain hidden. Or perhaps they sit silently in private collections, their true origins concealed. The uncertainty is what gives the mystery its power. Decades after the war, treasure hunters still search. From divers exploring lakes to explorers scanning mountains with radar, the hunt continues. Some are driven by greed, others by history, and still others by the dream of solving a mystery that has eluded generations. Each expedition, whether it succeeds or fails, adds to the legend. The very act of searching keeps the story alive, reminding us that even in an age of satellites and global archives, there are still mysteries that remain unsolved. But perhaps the greatest legacy of the lost Nazi treasure is not about wealth at all. It is about morality. The treasures remind us of the cost of greed, the exploitation of war, and the attempt to erase cultures through theft. To pursue these treasures is not only to seek gold or art. It is to seek justice, to remember what was taken, and to ensure that history does not forget. They are symbols of survival, of memory, and of the resilience of the human spirit in the face of devastation. The lost Nazi treasure may never be fully found. Some of it may lie forever hidden, sealed beneath stone or sunk in dark waters. Some may already be gone, lost to fire or secrecy. But in their absence, these treasures have become something more than objects. They have become stories. Stories of memory, loss, and the unending human search for meaning. As you drift into rest, let the mystery linger. Somewhere in the silence of history, treasures may still wait. And even if they are never recovered, their legacy continues. In the museums that survived, in the families who remember, and in the questions we still ask. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the mystery of the lost Nazi treasure. If you found peace and reflection in this story, please like, subscribe, and share this channel for more World War II sleep history. Stories without battles, without explosions, but filled with the quiet echoes of the past.